Okay, I'd like to introduce the director, Vadim Perelman. I'm going to ask him a few questions and then we're going to open it up for the audience. You want to sit up there in a real seat? Don't break the Laemmle Theater. Okay. That's quite an extraordinary film. What drew you to the story and what inspired you to make the film?
The script, I think, drew me to the story more than anything else. And the inspiration was there from probably my childhood. Since then I've been very interested and involved in stories of the Holocaust and read a lot about it. Matter of fact, my mother was born in a cattle car escaping Kiev in 1941. Somewhere in Siberia. She was born on the floor of the cattle car, and that was a lucky thing because if they stayed, they would have died in Babi Yar. You know, there was, I'm sure you all know what Babi Yar is. And so, yeah, it's a subject that's very close to me.
Talk about how much of it is based on a true story, how much of your film is based on, I believe, was it a short story first?
The short story was 14 pages long, and the screenwriter, Hilary Helstein, he was influenced, I guess, inspired by it when he was young in the Soviet Union. The story was written in 1952 in East Germany. And so it kind of percolated in him until about 10 years ago when he wrote the screenplay.
What was the name of the short story?
Invention of Language by Wolfgang Kohlhauser. It's a 14-page story, and it's essentially a sketch. It didn't have an ending. It ended kind of in the middle. It was about a Jewish prisoner who was teaching Farsi also to a couple, you know, another Jewish prisoner, essentially, but with power.
So how much of the story was invented? How much did you contribute to the script?
Well, everything but the simple bare bones of a prisoner teaching Farsi. There was maybe 2 words in the whole short story, of which I took one because I loved the way it sounded. It was restaurant. And so, but it didn't have the, if I may say, the weight and the profundity of having the names as one of the important things, because if that wasn't there, if Gilles didn't, in the final scene, if he didn't realize, and that's why he cries, by the way, is that he realizes is that by simply saving his ass, he built a memorial to all those people, and that would have perished forever, their names and them, twice in the fires, once in the fireplace and the other time in Auschwitz, ultimately. So he saved them, he immortalized them. He remembered whatever he could remember, and the irony of it is that, Nazis spoke of his dearest and nearest things in that language, using Jewish victims' names. And it's, I have to tell you, I did my own little memorial in this, is that every name that he recites and every name in the book is actually victims in Auschwitz. Names of actual victims, so I thought, why make those up? They're right there.
Well, that's very special of you to share. That's really great. Well, I think that should be the first thing you share, and I'll be sure to share that. No, I think it's really important because there's a lot of Holocaust films, but what you've done in using the story as a way to memorialize people and then using the real names, but I just think it's fascinating. I was just sitting with a man over here who's actually Persian. So, it'd be very interesting to hear his perspective, and I don't know how much of the audience, how much of the audience knows even about his name, Reza June.
Yes, it's actually not too many people know, I think, unless you're Persian. But June in Farsi means, well, in their everyday use, means dear one. And they use it like they'll say, Vadim June. My ex-father-in-law was Persian, so he would say Vadim June, which means dear, Vadim dear, And so on the flyleaf of the book was written to my Reza June, which meant to my dear Reza. And of course, when asked by Koch, is that your last name, June? He said yes. And
But your Jewish character didn't know that either.
No, of course he didn't. That's why he said yes. So there is another bit of irony. I think that I almost caught it later. It was to me it was just a clever ploy, but I caught when he runs into the barracks to save him, and he's screaming, "Dear, dear, dear." Yeah.
It's very funny. But again, getting back to using parts of the names that, were ultimately killed to create a language is just an extraordinary idea.
That's all Mr. Zoffen, our screenwriter. It was a lovely, lovely conceit, I think brilliant conceit. And that's what made this film, I think, resonate. Without it, it would just be a story of one clever Jewish guy.
Yeah,
It was almost like you wouldn't even think. How many of you believe he was actually Rabbi's son? I don't think so. I think it was just a little trickster, probably a little thief. Who knows? It's Chaplin-like character. And for him to basically survive, he wasn't a hero in any way. At some point he kind of wanted to become a hero, but then Koch yanked him out of that column, going to Auschwitz. So he ended up being. I'll tell you an interesting tidbit. We shot a scene, and I've written that scene where after he yanks him from the woods from the column going to Auschwitz, he brings him into his office, throws him down. This time at his desk. So Lou raise a switch of power, sits down at the Koch's desk. And he throws the book in front of him and says, "Okay, write down the names of all those people that are, we have to document it." And he refuses. He says, "No, I won't." He's already kind of committed suicide in a way by saying, "I'm going there," and it was a great act of contrivance. And he'd given up. And how much of it was survivor guilt, how much of it was actual heroism, who knows? So he refuses, and then he flips the book, and the guy goes, "Why?" He flips the book around and says, "You've been eating, but I've been feeding you for 3 years." Because that's what Koch would understand, is the eating and the feeding. And Koch doesn't want to hear it. He flips the book like this, and that's when the explosions start, and everything's cut, and Koch has to escape. That was a choice. It was a choice, either that scene or the scene in Tehran at the airport, because it was they were mutually exclusive. And I kind of went with Tehran because I thought that Koch needed an ending of some sort.
That's pretty amazing. Talk about what kind of research you did to make it feel so authentic, and talk about where you shot the film.
Well, the research I did was actually quite extensive. For example, you probably remember there's not a single swastika in that camp. And they weren't any at all, because it was a secret project. The final solution was a secret project, even from the Wehrmacht. So in a way, so they didn't advertise there, they didn't hang their flags like in all the bad Holocaust movies or war movies. Everywhere, in every office, and almost carried them around. We shot in Belarus because it was very, very inexpensive. We could put a lot of money on the screen, which was great. And that's the reason. We found that building. It was a U-shaped army building, which had an absolutely hideously dark history. It was a Gestapo headquarters at one point when the Germans occupied Bobruisk. It's a town called Bobruisk. And it was a KGB prison. I mean, it was like those walls could talk. And we were in there, and in the quad of the building, which had that smokestack, don't know why, I liked the look of it. We built the offices. Those are sets, but the office, kitchen, and so on, and all the other ancillary spaces. But the barrack itself was built on the second floor of the building. We had to put down a floor. There wasn't even a floor. It was the abandoned building. And so that was good. It was a miserable shoot. It was absolutely miserable. Yeah, with the black dogs, those German shepherds. I'm Jewish, so I have that DNA memory, I think. I was terrified to look at them. 10 degrees colder inside the building than it was, and we had to run those big, huge propane heaters winter.
You shut it in the winter?
Yeah, it was kind of method for us.
Well, you could see when they talked that it was,
Yeah, it was great. So that's why
it was method, yeah. Okay, so talk about, these obviously are some challenges that you faced with shooting. How long was the shoot, and what other kinds of challenges did you face during the production of it?
The shoot was, I think, 40 days, which is great. In Belarus, 40 days. Only in Belarus we got 40 days for our budget. Challenges like on every shoot. I think the actors suffered the most because they all came from Europe and they all were in this kind of ex-Soviet environment in a small town in Belarus, and they just kept asking me, "Is that all you guys eat, buckwheat?" and little cutlets, because they said first 40 times it was great, but really delicious. But so there was a bit of a slog for them too, which was in a way method too, which is kind of good. There wasn't the usual trailer kind of
Hollywood.
Yeah, exactly.
Now the whole movie was in German.
Yes.
Do you speak German?
No.
So how did you shoot a film in a different language?
I was like the blind director. Says, now what's going on? Why won't anybody tell me what's happening in this? Yelling cut in inappropriate times. I got with it. I couldn't follow along fast enough because obviously the original script was written in Russian, and then I translated it to English, and then it flew to Berlin, thank God, electronically, every day for translation to German for the actors. And now here's another tidbit, is that Noel is Argentinian, is Argentinian, and he speaks Spanish, of course, fluently, and he lives in Paris, he speaks French fluently, but he doesn't know a word of German, which was, it was weird because I kind of missed that when I was casting. So when he came, I said, just do the English, when I had when they first met, and I spent 20 minutes with him just running through a scene. He said, "Can we do it in English?" I go, "Yeah, but not the whole film." And he goes, I don't know German, sorry. And I was in Berlin. So another piece of irony, I love irony, was the night before the actual filming, they were staying in the same little hotel, and so Lars, the Nazi, would sit with Noel and teach him how to speak German phonetically, and the exact lines that he was to say next day on the set. And on the set, Noel, or Reza, was teaching Koch how to speak the language. So, after a few days shooting in German, I went to the Germans. We had a lot of Germans in the cast, and they said, "Wonderful. Really great." Even a little bit of a French accent because he's supposed to be from Belgium. Yeah, so yeah, it went well. We didn't have Berlin, at the premiere. We didn't have anybody go, "Boo, that's terrible."
Yeah, tell them about what happened in Berlin. The film premiered in Berlin, and tell them what the reaction was.
It was a very good reaction. It was actually funny because I noticed you guys. I walked in at the end and I noticed a little bit of the same. And but when we had the first screening in Berlin, it was the first audience I ever had was with this film in Berlin, and it was in the Grand Palace. And it was probably about, I'd say 80% German. It was an international festival, but 80% native. And they laughed and laughed, and it was very strange. Like, for example, did you guys laugh? I wasn't here. You guys laughed when he said, no, of course he laughed. You should have laughed in 3 places, really, 3 places. Anything else for me is like, oh, why are they laughing? But one of the things, the first time they laughed, because you don't laugh at that shooting or anything. Thank God the Germans didn't laugh at that. But there was when he goes, "What's your mother's name?" And he pauses for a minute, trying to get his brain together. Come on, I'll have you shot. It's the first word that a child learns, and he says, "I'm done." A giant roar of laughter, at that word in Berlin. Well, but that's what I said. Why? And so later, I can't remember who was a critic. I think a German critic, because I said, "What do you guys? You have the weirdest sense of humor." And they said they were just nervous. I think because you don't believe that.
That a theater at the size of the palace, they're laughing when or is it just because of the way he delivered it? They knew from the beginning that he was.
No, they were in a way. It was nervous laughter, happy for him that he came up with something in that particular moment.
So that he was quick.
Yeah, but there were others. They loved the commandant scene with the small penis. They were very because it's right up their alley with the humor. And so anyway, yeah. A romp, a fun romp.
Well, I think it's good. I mean, there were some light moments that lightened, the heaviness of this film and the story, because you didn't know at any moment, especially like with bread, when he said the word, and you realized as soon as it came out of his mouth, and you almost started to feel like Koch was almost human for a moment, and then when
I think that's his progression. That's what that was the whole conceit of the whole film. Was to make Koch, to humanize him slowly, and have their roles flip around to a certain extent. That's one thing that I really worked on with that, as far as structuring screenplay and all that.
Yeah, it does come across. Couple more questions, and then we're going to take from the audience. Talk about. Huh? Okay, let's talk about your casting.
Yeah.
How did you come to choose these actors?
I liked them very much.
Did you go through a whole casting process? Did you have them in mind?
Yeah, you have to go through a casting process, especially with people that you don't know. These were not well-known actors to me at all. I just discovered them with you guys in a way. Maybe some of you know them, but yeah. So it was pretty obvious when I saw them that this was they were the ones.
And what was their relationship with each other, and what was your relationship in the way that you worked with them?
I didn't really work with them. I just cast them. I found the right people for the role, and then just gave them the characters to go with them. My work with the actors really was with Noel. Lars I didn't even touch. He's brilliant. There's nothing I can tell him. He's probably the best actor in Europe by far. And with Noel, it was, he asked me to modulate fear for him, basically, that he exhibits in the scene, so that he's not all over the place with the fear, so that it kind of wanes, as the film goes on.
How about we take some questions? Yes.
First of all, I absolutely loved it. I saw it last night and tonight, so I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
But I'm a little confused by your answer. Is any of this nonfiction? Is it based on reality?
It's all nonfiction.
It's all nonfiction.
All nonfiction. It's inspired by true events. My lawyers told me to put that up on the screen. It's not based on true events, but inspired. by true events, and I don't know, really matters to people, doesn't it? But stories like this, I mean, there are even wilder stories in the Holocaust, in that on that backdrop. So I don't think it's really outrageous. The stories of a man from a man's camp and a woman from a woman's camp falling in love through the fence, somehow managing to survive in a death camp. What are the chances of that? Then meeting again by chance in Israel and living together for the rest of their life. So to me, this is perhaps improbable, but not impossible. That's why inspired. And the true event was the Holocaust. That's my pop-up.
I think that's the biggest issue, is that there's always the concern about when we say inspired by, yes, the Holocaust happened, but because there are deniers, that when you say inspired by, people want to believe.
Yeah, there's plenty of films that show way more of the Holocaust than I do. So this wasn't about that. It wasn't my job to educate them about the Holocaust. It was more my job, and I hope I get to one of you ask that question.
Okay, who's going to ask
what
that
my
question?
job was.
What was your job?
My job was to, because every Holocaust film, maybe I'm generalizing, but a lot of the Holocaust films are about Jews as victims, and that's what it is. And what they try and do is they say, never again. We're going to show this one more time in a different light, perhaps, hopefully, so that it doesn't happen again. And not just to Jews, but to other potential Jews, in that situation. I was more, and this was actually a very scary thing for me to do, right at the script stage, was to humanize Nazis, but not too much, and just enough. Because I think we all felt, if we're honest with each other, we all felt kind of sorry for Cohen, and in general, we felt like, yeah, damn right, comeuppance, but still, it was like, oh my God, look how crushed he is, with this whole thing. And the reason for that was, it's very kind of Hannah Arendt kind of thing, where it's the banality of evil, and they were first and foremost people, those people in those uniforms. So then they loved, they were jealous, they had a brother, they had fears, they had their own reasons for joining the party, which may not have to do with demagoguery or being forced to, perhaps insecurities, whatever. But the scary thing is when you see people, not robots like Nazis are portrayed, Rouse and Schnell and Shoot, like at the beginning of the film, but people commit those acts, and that's what makes it look at ourselves. So then my message really is, I hope there's no more Nazis, instead of I hope there's no more victims like the Jews. I think one will.
Thank you for your beautiful film. I'm a Persian speaker, a real one. So for me, when I heard
I don't know. Are you really a real one?
So what's mother?
on that, but to me it sounded like gibberish. But I'm curious, if you're a non-native speaker, that might sound similar actually. So how did that language get developed? And also, your other movie that has the same talk was about an Iranian family. So can you tell me a little bit more? Is it just coincidence, or you're
Yeah, it's just a coincidence. I'll answer the second one. It's mother of my kids is Persian, but that's about the only connection I have.
Well, there is inspiration then.
Yeah, in a negative way. No, I'm joking. So, desperation. And the first question, the language. The language actually is a good question. We needed for him to say something, to teach him something. And so I went to Moscow State University. There was a linguist, and gave him the dream linguist task. He was like, I'm just studying languages, and here I get to make a language. And so I, a script, very, very, detailed, underlined every word that he needed to make up, and and just said that I wanted it to be Eastern sounding, kind of Arabic, Hebrew, among those kinds of pronunciations. And that's it. And we have 600 words, and they're all grammatically, it's not just words, it's suffixes, prefixes, tenses. So they don't just say the word, because I think Koch would have caught on. As stupid as he was, he still would have probably caught on if Fraser just spoke like a child. So, yeah, it exists.
So now you
I'm
have
gonna
a new
upload
language.
it sometime, this
Yeah.
language, yeah.
That's great.
Okay, a lot of the film is actually focusing on the interaction among the Germans. And yes, they're involved in petty problems, falling in love and all that. But yet, I didn't find any of the Germans likable as people.
No.
None of them
No,
were.
but they shouldn't be likable, but we should at least recognize them as people. That was my
As
point.
people.
Huh? Yeah.
No, because there was,
They weren't robots the way they were portrayed otherwise. Because robots are easy to excuse. It's like the scorpion in the boat as well. He's a scorpion. He stings. And that makes it, they're Nazis. That's what they do.
But by humanizing them makes it even more horrific.
You look at yourself.
humanizing it in such a way that they have no sympathy for what they're doing to the
And they
the
didn't.
Jews. It's like their job is to kill Jews as long as they're doing their job.
Yeah. That's what they did.
Okay.
You don't like that I portrayed that? That I showed
No,
that?
that was the truth. That was
That's
not
actually
the-
based on real events.
No, that was the truth, because I know the reason they came up with gassing as opposed to shooting is
More
because of
efficient.
the impact it had on the
Exactly.
Germans who were doing the shooting. They
Exactly.
didn't care about the victims.
Exactly.
They were supposed to.
Yeah, but they've culled those people out through the process. The Einsatzgruppen, they were shooting people in ravines and, in those pits and all that. The ones who couldn't hack it were sent home and replaced with new ones. There was a lot of psychological effect
And
on
they used a lot of alcohol.
And
If
methamphetamines.
you forgot to shoot a baby or something, you give them some vodka. They used a lot of alcohol.
In their kits, they had 3 tablets of methamphetamines a day. Yeah. Because it's easier to do crazy shit.
Is there a question, or are you just calling it out that it was upsetting to you?
The Germans were not made likable. That's the thing. I still.
We're not or should not be. What are you
No,
trying
they
to say?
should. Well.
No, it's interesting. So they weren't made
They were
like.
not made
Well,
likable.
great.
There isn't a single
Wonderful.
German that
That's
liked
good.
the whole
Yeah, I'm
movie.
glad you didn't like them.
Do you have another question?
I really enjoyed the film.
Thank you.
I might disagree that I actually find some of their experiences relatable. But I wanted to ask about the cinematography in particular, because usually these kind of films are very contemplative, static, epic in a way, and this felt very like the camera with the characters moving throughout the world that they were in.
That was the music that made it seem that way. It's actually very simply and statically shot on purpose.
Okay,
But
it felt
yeah.
like a POV constantly, and I just
POV?
wanted to ask, from
There was not a single POV in the movie.
from the perspective of the main character, is like where the scenes were with him. It felt like the story was with him at all times.
That's great. Thank you.
What was the question?
Yeah, I guess the question was like, why were the choices with cinematography?
Why were the choices with the cinematography? It was a creative choice. It was cinematography to be with the characters and not to go look at me directing. And to just have a canvas for the characters. It wasn't, it ended up being beautiful because Vladislav is an incredibly talented cinematographer. But, we purposely stayed away from from any prime colors, you know, it was all
Yeah.
earth tones.
Some dark tones.
Yeah, it was, stayed away from blue.
Yeah.
Red even.
Yeah, there's no red. Oh, okay, we have a question here and then one up there.
Louder, please, so they
Yeah,
can.
sorry.
Or we can repeat.
You know, when I see certain films, especially this one that took place with a lot of snow, when your film is green lit and you know that you're gonna have scenes that have snow and it's a very important, how do you choose when to shoot those scenes and how to overcome if it's not seasonal?
I'll tell you. There you go.
Can we repeat that?
Tidbit, he says, how do you choose, you know, how do you deal with the snow? Like it falls, it melts, and so on, when you're in your schedule.
Yeah.
Right, so, the scene of them clearing the snow, you know, we had a clear, we had shot scenes that were in the movie after that.
A lot of
When he's finding the doll and so on. That's a different question.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you know, so what, you know, we faced when one morning we woke up and the whole quad was filled with a foot of snow. You know, we had all those scenes after. Tell you the truth, I absolutely despaired. You know, I was like, this is screwed. You know, and we're not gonna, you know, can we melt it? No.
No insurance.
Can we do anything about it? We gotta shoot today. And so on the way in the little van, I said, I didn't actually, my assistant said, why don't you do a scene where they're clearing the snow?
That's
Which was
brilliant.
a brilliant solution to the whole thing, you know,
It's
and
actually one of the best shots. I love that.
yeah, it's Bruegel, it ended up being very Bruegel-like, yeah, but, you know, so, I don't know if they could have cleared the snow that well, but, you know, in your mind, they cleared the snow.
There was a question up there.
Now, I wanted to know about the last shot on Max. What was your direction for him? Because he looked between bewildered, sad, vindictive.
Keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, lost to quite a bit. There was a scene, actually a whole sequence shot. You were wondering, why the hell did we go back to that snowy church at the end that he
Yeah.
walks by?
Yeah.
Because there was a whole scene shot, and it was the last day of the shooting for us, where he's walking by the church and Max is in there, because he had escaped. And Max chases him down the snowy alley and starts killing him. And the Italian gave him that knife in that version of the story. And so he sticks and kills Max and walks away. You know, and walks on further. So
I like it better that you just left it.
yeah,
left him to
I
suffer
think
in
these
his
are
own-
all good decisions. Yeah, I really do.
What happened to the Italian's mute brother? Did he stay in the farm or did he come back and, because he swapped places with him.
Yes, he did.
So
What happened to him? I don't know. Hell, I don't-
Let that character go, okay.
I didn't go to the
We
farm.
just
I was
assume he
busy
survived.
shooting the movie. I don't know.
I'm a story person.
Yeah. Right.
Yes, we have a question here.
It started with a short film, and
Short story.
What is the timeline between when you decided to do the feature film, and how was your collaboration with the writer, the screenwriter? Did you tell him exactly what you wanted?
No, I translated his script, basically, and that's when I had a chance to just put my own things in, to augment a little bit. Yeah, it's generally, it is what it is. It is what it was,
Where
but,
did you get the screenwriter? It's your choice to pick the...
no, they chose me. The script existed for 10 years already. So the producers and
That's a
the
lot.
screenwriter chose me,
Huh.
and then I ripped it out of their hands and ran with it.
He was the chosen one.
Yeah.
Making a Jewish joke.
Right.
Oh, okay. We have one more question. We'll start with her.
I'm very grateful that you chose the church scenes the way you did.
Thank
To
you.
give to us. First of all, to see the first one where the German soul is able to refresh himself the first time. And the last time, there is an empty church that is
Yeah.
just forgotten. He just walks past it.
Exactly.
That was truly
Because that's no place of solace for him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the other thing I noticed was watching the men work on the chain gang.
Mhm.
5 years earlier was, I'm on the chain gang. The American, penal system used the exact same,
Yeah, I think all over the world,
All
it's
over
called
the world.
forced labor.
but it made everything much more relevant to our history and also around
Yeah.
the world, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll take one last question and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, first of all, it's great movie, fantastic movie. I have a PhD in modern German history.
In German history?
Yeah, I did a lot of work on the Holocaust.
Wow.
Did a good
What do you
job.
think?
Good job.
Yeah, okay.
I had a question though. Early in the movie, relatively early, when the SS guy tried to get him to escape, so he
Yeah.
could shoot him or
Yeah.
get in trouble. And he runs in the forest, and then this old guy with clearly not a Nazi uniform.
Drunk old guy. With a French gendarme.
Yeah, that's right.
The collaboration is,
I don't get it.
I don't either, actually. It's, it's because, somebody just now in an interview called it a fable, very much so. So he's kind of that forest, I don't even know, I'm not well versed in fables to say what sort of, but he's the guy that the Greek chorus, he tells them, he says, don't do this, because he's drunk. You should have just shot him, really.
So
But
it's not a literal.
it's a plot device, if anything. It's a plot device to get him back to the camp. There's swamps over here, mines over there, yeah, so, you better go back and motivate him to figure out a way to remember the words.
The most amazing part. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Really appreciate all of this.
The film is playing in general release. It will be playing tomorrow, 1, 4, and
Yes.
7, and throughout the week.
See it again and
please
again.
see it again and tell your friends to come see it. Thank you so much for coming.